What's the significance of waistcoats with collars, and are there certain times they should be worn with waistcoats without collars?
Does he mean by lapels or collars?
I'm guessing lapels.
I think it means the lapels.
Yeah. It's just a look. I don't think there's a big significance to it. It's just a look. The majority of the time, and the reason I'm saying lapels versus collars is because a lot of times on tweed waistcoats or vests, you end up with basically the back is satin. So there's a seam right on the shoulder, and the lapel basically is here, but it stops right at the collar. It doesn't, or right at the shoulder seam. It doesn't go around the back like a yoke kind of thing. So lapels, yes. Lapels. If I was going to get a vest and it was just the vest, I was going to wear it by itself. I wasn't going to wear it with the jacket. I tend to like the lapels just to, spruce it up a little bit, just to give it some visual interest. It looks a little bit more period-esque. I don't know. I dig
it's
on it.
A little definition.
Yeah.
A little something. Yeah.
A little something.
Yes. Technical kilting term there.
SUMTIN.
In fact, that's in my book that's coming out soon. No, it's just a fashion thing. I wouldn't worry about it. I think there are times when having the lapels on the waistcoat might visually compete with the lapels on the jacket. So you'll find, like, for instance, like, your standard Argyle vest does not have lapels on it. And I think that's because whoever was designing the old, what's now standard and very simple Argyle jacket and vest combo at the time thought, we don't want to detract from the look of the lapels on the jacket. We want to keep this simple. Fine. So it's personal preference, like we often say, but it's basically just a fashion design. There's no significance to it, really.
And I will point this question more to Eric. Do you think it's more of a holdover from the 18th century, 17th century?
That far back?
Look at the waistcoats in the American Revolution. Look at during the Revolution.
Yeah.
Look at the vests and waistcoats.
You could argue
during the 1860s. There are a lot of similarities.
I think there's definitely similarities, and I think what happens in the 20th century and now 21st century is that designers will, ever since the Prince Charlie coatee was invented back when it was in the 20s, they've looked at different elements of style from the past 300 years and said, I like how that looks. They'll look good with that. Let's put them together. Let's cut it this way. Sketch it up. Ta-da! New look. So, yeah, I think they're drawing inspiration from all those things, but, whether there's a collar or not on a waistcoat has gone in and out. Like you said, like shawl collars were huge in the 1870s. That was a very common thing. And then they went away. Men's fashion doesn't change as much as women's fashion does. When it does change, it's the little details that do. And it's like, this year we're going to do away with the lapels. So I think it's Highland fashion draws from all over history, definitely with a bias towards military fashion, but it's just fashion.
And it also takes much longer. As far as
menswear in general,
regular menswear fashion, menswear fashion in general, just non-Highland wear, evolves faster. If you look at pictures, one from the 70s, one from the 80s, one from the 90s, one from the 60s, you can see, as soon as you see the picture, you're gonna be like, oh, I know what time period that's from. Highland wear, it's a little, it takes much longer to evolve. You could look at something from the 1920s and something from the 1950s in traditional Highland wear, and they would look very, very similar. I will also say this, that the fashions are kind of cyclical. Things that, like you were alluding to with the shawl collar, or things that were in fashion, 100 plus years ago, may come back into fashion at some point. Or, it's cyclical. Yeah. So
there's a nostalgia effect. But the fact that it doesn't change very much is also part and parcel of the fact that it is considered a traditional national dress. So there's always going to be an element who don't want it to change. They don't want it to become trendy. They want it to always be that cornerstone that you can count on looking at and being able to say, yep, that is Scottish national dress right there. So you'll always have that benchmark, and then fashion changes will come and go over time, but the baseline tends to remain the same.
Yeah.
There are some trends right now which I won't be sorry to see go, to be honest. Some of the funkier stuff that's come out of the higher industry.
And they might Groucho Marx.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's some of the stuff, Yeah, some of the stuff that's come out, or like the solid black kilts, solid black jackets, black shirt, black sporran, black, metal, that kind of stuff.
Black metal.
That came in and kind of went out realistically in a 7-8 year period in the late 2000s, early 2010s. But it's not. So that's an example of something coming in and going out and not sticking for fashion.
Right.
Now, something that I personally am not a big fan of, but it's stuck around much longer than that, like semi-dress sporrans. They've been around for much longer. A traditionalist may not like a semi-dress sporran because it's neither fish nor fowl. It's not as dressy as a dress sporran or as plain as a day sporran. It kind of it falls in the middle in a gap. You could also say it bridges the two. But that one's been around for a while, so it will probably continue to exist.
I think
fly plaids. There's other things in this that have
my example of something that's super trendy right now, and we're getting off on a huge tangent here. We'll stop soon.
Us?
I promise.
Never. No.
I don't know if they're popular anymore, but for a while I have these images of like hipster wedding outfits, kilt outfits, where they've got tartan incorporated into the jacket. I'm not talking about the Welsh stuff, but there's this other one.
Similar.
It's a weird like tweed and tartan patchwork kind of effect, and it just looks odd. It's just like it just screams, "I'm trying too hard. I'm trying to be cool."
I wouldn't necessarily say that was a trend, because a trend implies that more than two random dudes did it. So there may be a few people who have done it, but a trend is more like a lot of people done it.
I think it's a trend if the design that the designer is trying to push catches on.
Yeah, it depends on the definition of catching on.
Right.
Is really
so there's some experiments out there also.
Yes.
That I don't care for.
Yes, experiment is a better term in my mind.
But as far as whether you have lapels or not on your waistcoat, nobody's going to care.
Nope. I have both. I have waistcoats with lapels. I have some without lapels. If I'm wearing if I'm getting a tweed and I figure I'm never going to get a jacket in this one, but I like it and I want to get a vest, I will also get a matching tweed back to the vest, because that looks a little bit better than the satin back. And I'll generally get the lapels on it just for fun, but I have plenty of tweed vests without lapels too.